Today we're going to be talking about solving two-step equations with rational numbers. And this is going to be the title on page 50 of your interactive notebook. So write the equation 1/8 x minus 2 equals 6. As you probably remember from yesterday, we are going to use inverse operations to find out the value of x. Remember, your inverse operations are if they give you subtract, we're going to add. If you give you multiply, we're going to divide. These equations are a little different than yesterday's because they have fractions and decimals in the problems. If you're given a fraction, just like in Unit 2, we're going to change that fraction to a decimal so we can use our calculator to do the calculations. So remember, this is going to be numerator divided by denominator. So we're going to do 1 divided by 8, which many of you have memorized as 0.125x minus 2 equals 6. So now we can use our calculator to start solving and finding the value for x. The big key to solving equations is remembering to use inverse operations to solve, and whatever you do on the left-hand side, you always have to do on the right because that equals is like a balance scale. So we want to maintain our equality. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to find out where x is in the equation. So you're always going to start with x. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to make what's called a do-undo chart. Whatever's being done to x, we're going to undo it with the inverse. So if I'm looking at x, and the first thing I notice is that it's being multiplied by 0.125. So I'm going to put that in my do list. The other thing that's being done to x is subtracting 2. So that also goes in my do list. Now, I'm going to figure out how can I undo this. And the way I use an undo chart is I start at the bottom. So I move down the do side and go back up the undo side. So to undo subtracting 2, I'm going to add 2. And to undo multiplying, I'm going to divide by 0.125. Notice when I filled out the do side, I worked my way down. Then I moved over to the undo column, and I worked my way back up. So that's the order we're going to go in. We're going to move down, over, and up in order to solve these equations. So here's the chart that you've got written. And here's your problem. I would go ahead and write your problem to the right-hand side of your chart, so then that way you'll have plenty of room to solve for x. So the first thing we need to do is we need to start at the bottom of the undo side, and it tells me to add 2. So I like to make kind of a nice, neat problem by drawing a line through the equal sign, and I just make it look like an add or subtract problem. It's going to just keep me neat. It doesn't matter if you do this or not, but I think it's really going to help you organize your work. So we're going to add 2 to both sides. It also helps me, if I'm drawing those lines, it helps me see that I've done the same inverse operation on both sides of the equation. So if I'm adding 2, negative 2 plus 2 cancels to give me 0 according to the additive inverse property. And 6 plus 2 is 8. So since my 2's canceled, I only have left 0.125x on the left-hand side and 8 on the right-hand side. And then the last thing I'm going to do in my undo chart as I'm moving up is divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 0.125, which should cancel. And x is on the left, and 64 is on the right. So x is equal to 64. So if I plugged in 64 for x, multiplied by 0.125, and subtracted 2, my answer would be 6. Okay, let's try another one. The next problem I want you to write down is 12 minus 1/9 x equals 17. Many of you also have 1/9 memorized. You remember that that's going to be 0.1 repeating. If you don't, then you can go ahead and use your calculator and do -1 divided by 9. Notice that since there is a subtraction sign, I'm treating that decimal as a negative number. And it is going to be repeating. If you're working with repeating decimals, please make sure to fill up your entire calculator screen with the number that's repeating. This is going to help you get the most accurate answer and closest to the actual whole number. So here's my problem, 12 minus 0.1x equals 17. What's being done to x? Well, I found x and I see that it's being multiplied by -0.1 repeating. Notice that it's 12. The only thing that's left is 12 because I included that subtraction with the -0.1 repeating. So the opposite, so a 12 is just going to be positive, and the opposite would be subtracting or -12. And then, of course, to undo multiplication, we're going to divide. So let's see what that looks like as we're moving down, and now we're getting ready to move back up our undo chart. So here we go. There's our problem. I'm going to keep my work neat, and I'm going to start out by subtracting 12. Remember, that's a positive 12. The inverse of positive is negative. Negative and subtraction can be treated the same. Our 12 minus 12 cancels, so I'm left with -0.1 repeating and equals 5. 17 minus 12 is 5. Notice everything that I did not mark out, I brought down to the next step. The negative I did not mark out, so I brought it down. The 0.1 repeating I did not mark out, so I brought it down. The x I did not mark out, so I brought it down. Now the last thing I'm going to do is divide according to my chart. And when I divide, my -0.1's cancel, so the only thing that I have on the left-hand side is x, and 5 divided by -0.1 repeating is -45.